Hello everyone, welcome back to Marketing Analytics. In this lecture, we will discuss advertising. Over the past decade, the advertising industry has experienced drastic changes as the world was migrating from conventional advertising to digital advertising. As a result, advertising messages have become more and more targeted towards individual customers. And over the next decade, we should expect more tectonic changes in the advertising industry as TVs are migrating from traditional linear TV to digital TV, and customers can customize what they watch. Let's get to it. Today's topic is on the application of marketing analytics in advertising. First, let's take a look at the most downloaded app in the recent quarters. This is the first quarter of 2022 on both iOS and Android platforms. The top 5 most downloaded apps are TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, HBO Max, and Instagram. So 4 of them are similar in terms of their business models, that is, how they make money. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and of course plus Google, which owns the Android platforms. It's been pre-installed on all the Android phones. So the similarity among them is they are all advertising-based businesses. So obviously advertising is a dominant business model on mobile platforms. And if you look more closely at all these apps we have mentioned here, HBO Max included, there are basically 2 main revenue generating models for the content-centric businesses on mobile platforms. The first is advertising. The second is subscription. The only exception here, HBO Max, that does not use advertising to generate revenue, actually is a subscription-based business. We will come back to these 2 different revenue generating models later. So first, let's take a look at the seismic change in advertising over the past 2 decades. So on this chart, I'm going to show you the advertising spending in North America between 2000 and 2022. So what we are interested in, at the bottom here you can see, are different mediums where advertising is run. We have TV, radio, outdoor, magazine, newspaper, cinema, and internet. And then the horizontal axis is the years from 2000 to 2022. The vertical axis is ad spending, the amount of money spent on advertising in $1 million. So at the top here, 250,000 million is basically $250 billion. And first, the ad spending on TV, radio, outdoor, magazine, newspaper, cinema, so everything except internet. This is the history of advertising spending of all the other media. As you can see here, the orange color indicates TV, the conventional top platform for advertising spending. It has held up pretty well over the past 2 decades, but it did not incur a very large growth. As you can see, all the other platforms, they are either growing very slowly or incurred heavy decay in spending. For example, the blue color here is newspaper. It went from close to TV at $50 billion and all the way below to where it was in 2000. On the other hand, internet-based advertising has experienced a dramatic increase in spending. Of course, part of this increase has come from traditional media such as newspaper or magazines. As people are going more and more paperless, advertising spending have migrated to digital advertising spending on websites of the newspapers. But still, at the end of the day, in today's world, internet-based advertising or digital advertising has become the absolute dominant platform, and to a large extent, that's where today's marketing analytics on advertising has been focusing on So it's either to tackle digital advertising related issues or conventional TV advertising related issues. So that is over the past 2 decades. So what about looking into the future? In the next decade, a major change that has already been happening is linear TV is on the way out. By linear TV, I mean the type of TV programs where users are not selecting what TV programs to watch, but to watch whatever is on the TV. So the TV programs are laid out linearly over time, except for sports programs and the live TV shows. TV has now migrated more and more towards what they call over-the-top TV, that is on top of linear TV. And the program we watch has become more and more on-demand based. And on TV platforms, there are 2 main revenue models, the same as what we have discussed on the mobile apps. They are advertising and subscriptions. Advertising is the conventional linear TV model where the programs are shown to audiences at 0 or very low cost. Traditionally, this would be broadcasting TV through the antenna and basic cable at fairly low cost, but there's advertising within the programs. And more recently, as we see that these 2 types of zero cost or low cost models have been successfully transferred into the new TV business model. On the low cost end, we have YouTube delivering user generated content, but with advertising in it. And at the low cost level, we have seen Hulu. In the near future, Netflix will have advertising within the TV programs. And another way, of course, is subscription to directly charging customers on content. Examples are Netflix, HBO, Disney Plus. So in general, these are the 2 types of revenue generating models. In a pure play advertising model, there's no cost to the users. And the business model is actually what we call a 2-sided market, where in the middle you have the content deliverer, such as broadcasting TV. The content deliverer gets money from the advertisers. On the other hand, the content is designed to attract audience. So the audience watch the TV at no cost, and the advertisers buy the eyeballs by putting advertising in front of the content audience. For this type of business model, it is important to deliver return on investment ROI to advertisers. And it is important for the content creator or the deliverer to know who to show what advertising. That is, the content deliverer needs to match up contents with the audience so that they can attract more eyeballs, higher quality eyeballs for the advertisers. On the other hand, we have pure play subscription-based models such as HBO, where the content creator creates content and then audiences would subscribe the content and pay money directly to the content creators. In this type of business model, it is important to understand customer value and why customers may subscribe to your program and why customers may churn. That is the industry jargon for stop subscribing your program. And then, of course, there are hybrids such as Hulu and the new Netflix business model, where they draw money both from subscribers and also from advertisers delivering advertising. And as you can see, these 2 types of revenue generating models, they require slightly different types of priorities in terms of understanding the customer base. As a result, the kind of marketing analytic tools that we apply to these 2 types of businesses are also slightly different. We are going to touch upon both of them. So in this lecture, we're going to mainly focus on the advertising-based business, where we introduce the analytics tools to estimate ROI to advertisers and how do we optimize advertising. In a subsequent lecture, we're going to look at how to estimate customer lifetime value, and further we're going to examine the analytic tools to identify the reasons why customers churn. So when it comes to digital advertising, there are generally speaking two types of digital advertising. On the left-hand side, you can see an ad on the platform Instagram, and this is a sponsored ad for an app called Picture This. It can help identify what a specific plant is when you take a picture of it. And this is what we call a display ad, and it's usually plugged in as part of the feed to the users. On the right-hand side is what we call a keyword search advertising, and keyword search advertising usually shows up on search results. So in this case, I've searched for vacation house, evolve.com, and then you also see additional advertising of booking.com. So the two types of advertising, display ad and keyword search ads. And for display ads, we can see many examples. TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, the list goes on. On the other hand, not many platforms are running keyword-based search ads. We pretty much only see Google and Bing. Between the two of them, they cover more than 90% of the market. The way these two types of advertising charge advertisers usually differ a little. For display ads, advertisers are usually charged on a pay per impression or PPM basis. So for example, the platform might charge advertiser $1 for every 1,000 exposures. Every 1,000 times your ad appears on someone's screen, and then you pay $1 to the platform, such as Facebook. And for keyword search advertising, they usually charge on a pay per click basis. That is, each time a user clicks through an ad, the advertiser has to pay the platform. So because keyword search ads charge on a PPC basis, pay per click, these ads can be very expensive. For example, let's say I buy the keyword private jet. And think about the kind of people who actually search for private jet. They're either going to buy a private jet or they're going to charter a private jet. So let's say out of 100 people clicking through a private jet ad, one person actually charters one. And for chartering the jet, I can make $1,000. So I would, on average, make $1,000 for every 100 people that clicks through, which means if I pay, on average, lower than $10 an ad, I can make money by purchasing keyword ads, private jet. As you can imagine, some private jet charter or manufacturers could be willing to pay several dollars per click for a keyword on private jet. So they can get quite expensive. And this boils down to a very important concept that we want to discuss when it comes to advertising. It's the return on investment, or ROI, of an advertiser. For an advertiser, ROI is the most important metric for judging whether running an ad is worth it. So the calculation for ROI is the profit generated from ads minus the cost of ads and then divided by the cost of ads. And for instance, if I can make $1,000 from the ads and ads only cost me $500, so 1,000 minus 500 is 500, divided by the cost of ads is 500, the ROI would basically be 500 divided by 500. That gives me 1 or 100%. So the return on investment is 100%. That would be an amazing ROI to run these ads. And separately in the Excel videos, we're going to show how to estimate the return on investment of an ad. And here is an example of the context. So let's say a Facebook ad costs 1 cent each time the ad is shown to a user. So 1 cent per impression. And the expected number of impressions is 1,000 per day. And for those exposed to the ad, 1% clicks through. And for those who click through, 2% actually purchase something at your website. And then on average, a purchase creates 1,000 in revenue and generates $20 in profit. So there are 30 days a month, and the question is, what is the average monthly ROI of showing the ad on Facebook, and what can be done to improve the ROI? So as I said, we're going to show the calculation in Excel separately, but here let's take a look at what can be done to improve the ROI. The idea here is to break down this funnel-like process. The user first has to see the ad, that is the impression, and then has to click through, has to make a purchase, and how much they purchase, and then the margin of what's been purchased. So in order to improve the ROI, the ideas would be first to improve impression, how to get better impression, or how to get cheaper impression. You can either pay Facebook more to get more impressions, or could Facebook actually do a better job to deliver higher quality impressions so that the people who see your ad are more likely to be potential buyers. At the second stage, click-through, can you improve the click-through rate by improving your ad design, using better pictures? Can Facebook help you deliver the ads better so that for every 1,000 impressions you get more click-throughs? And the third stage, purchase, yes or no? Can we make the deal on the page more appealing? Can we better match the intention of people who click through with the items being played so they are more likely to purchase the item on the landing page? And then, of course, there is purchase amount and the margin of what's being purchased. So it depends on what kind of content we show on the landing page and what kind of product that eventually they would purchase on the website after browsing through different pages. So all these 5 different measures can potentially improve the ROI of our advertising. And here, there are things the advertisers can do, and there are things that only the platform can do. And in this case, for example, the click-through rate on impression. And if Facebook can show a better matched ad, then per 1,000 impression, you're going to see more click-through to the advertiser's website, and it will deliver better ROI to the website. And with better ROI, advertisers would be willing to pay more for Facebook's ads, then Facebook can improve their revenue. And here, obviously, in order to better match the impression to generate a higher click-through rate, Facebook needs to know the users better. And the mechanism that Facebook gets to know the users better is through tracking. So they track various information about the Facebook user, including where you have been, what you have seen, what have you purchased before. They know who you are and they know your history. And if you listen to the podcast posted, you will see that for Facebook, it is extremely important for it to be able to track users. And unfortunately, Apple has made it very easy for users to stop Facebook from tracking. And as a result, Facebook has lost $10 billion in 2022 comparing to the previous year because they can no longer track many of the iOS users. And as a result, the ads on Facebook become less effective, and advertisers are bidding lower and lower on Facebook ads. From an advertiser's perspective, it needs to make a decision on how much they would want to pay or how much they could or should pay for a digital ad. Usually, an advertiser can decide a target ROI. So how much return on investment do I need to get to purchase an ad on Facebook or on TikTok? And given this target ROI, the advertiser can actually calculate how much it should pay for the advertising. In a separate video, we're going to show, based on a targeted ROI, how does an advertiser decide how much it should pay for impression ads. And the examples we give will be based on a pay per impression basis, PPM basis. I'll leave this for you to think about, how to calculate the ROI of a pay per click PPC Google ad. the calculation process is actually quite similar. It's just the funnel of clicking through differs a little bit for a keyword-based ad. So advertisers often run advertising over time. You don't just show an ad for once. You tend to run ads repeatedly over time. And the user might see an ad multiple times before they decide to make a purchase. So within the industry, there's a measurement for advertising exposure. The measurement is called a GRP, or gross rating point. And the calculation for GRP is defined as reach by frequency. And reach is the percentage of a target demographic. Let's say you want to target a specific type of demographic. Let's say a demographic group between 25 to 46. So that is your target demographic. If your ads reach 5% of that target demographic group, then your reach in this case is 5%. And frequency is number of times that these people have seen the ads in your campaign. So the GRP would reflect the eyeballs that your ads have reached. It measures more or less the number of people that have seen your ad times the number of times they have seen your ad. So as you can imagine, people remember things. So when you show advertising, let's say in January, it probably is going to have an effect in January. But it does not mean that by February people have forgotten all about the ad. The effect of advertising tends to linger a little bit. It is not a memoryless process. That's why when measuring advertising, we usually use a concept called adstock. It's almost like advertising, once you show it, is put into people's memory storage. So it's not transient. It has residual values over time. So that's why we call this an adstock. And here's an example. An ad had 1,000 GRP in January 2022. Should we expect any effect in February 2022? What about March? So a related question is, how does advertising campaign build up over time? Here's an example. So you have 1,000 GRP in January 2022. People can remember only 10% of it in February. So month-to-month decay is 90%, you have 10% left. So this 1,000 GRP becomes 100 GRP in February 2022. And if you keep showing ads every month, let's say you build up another 1,000 GRP through new advertising in February, and you have 100 GRP left because of residual from January. So in this case, your total GRP in February 2022 is 1,000 plus 100. It's basically 1,100 GRP. Similarly, we can do this calculation from month to month. And here's the equation for adstock calculation. So the equation goes like this. Your adstock in month T, let's say in February, is the ad you show in that month plus a lambda, a residual parameter, times the adstock you had in the previous month in January. So back to our numerical example. So in January, we just started, we had an adstock of 1,000. And then times the residual percentage, let's say 10%, times 0.1. And then plus the new ad we run in February, that's 1,000. So it's 1,000 plus 0.1 times 1,000. So the adstock in February in month T is 1,100. And similarly, when we have adstock of 1,100 in February, we can calculate the adstock in March using a similar process. Because advertising aggregates over time, there are different ways to run ads over time. And here are 3 common ways ads are run over time. So in this example, the company has an advertising budget of $20 million to spend over a span of 20 weeks. And the company can run ads differently. The first way is what we call blitz. In blitz, the advertising is very concentrated, very high level of advertising during a relatively short period of time, followed by a longer period of time where you run no ads. So here you have $20 million advertising budget running only during the first 5 weeks. So you're running $4 million of ads each week. So very intensive advertising. That's blitz. The second way of running advertising is called pulsing. So in pulsing, we run high intensity ads and then we stop. We run high intensity ads and then stop, on and on and on. It's on, off, on, off, on, off. That's what we call pulsing. So in this case, again, you have $20 million budget and you run on the first week using $4 million budget. And then you run on the 5th, 9th, 13th, and 17th week. And for the 3 weeks in between, you run no ads. So this is what we call pulsing. And the third way to run advertising is kind of a more constant, slow flow. So that's what we call even. So for even advertising, you run pretty much the same level of advertising intensity. You don't take breaks. You don't concentrate them. So $20 million budget over 20 weeks, we spend $1 million on advertising every week. And these different timing of the advertising would have different implications on the effectiveness. And it's mainly influenced by two factors. One is the advertising decay rate, or the residual ratio of advertising in adstock. So the concept is when the residual value changes, it will influence which type of advertising timing becomes more effective. A second factor that influences the timing of the advertising is the advertising response curve. So in this curve, what we have is exposure on the horizontal axis. So the further right you go, the higher the advertising exposure is. And on the vertical axis is the product sales. The higher you go, the higher the sales. As you can think about it, overall the relationship should be positive. That is, when you have more exposures of advertising, you should expect higher sales. So the relationship should be positive. But the advertising response curve, it tends not to be a straight line between the two. The relationship tends to be an S-shaped response curve. It will look like this. And intuitively, what this basically says is when you have very low advertising intensity, very few people actually see it, and they don't see it as often, it may be fairly ineffective. So the response curve is very flat. And then when people see more of your ads passing a certain sweet spot, you're going to see a lot of response. That is, when you increase advertising spending, when people see more ads, when more people see it, you are going to have a pretty significant increase in sales. So this is the sweet part of advertising. This is where your advertising spending should be in this region. And then when you spend more and more advertising, when you spend too much, you're going to saturate the market. That is, when everybody has seen your ads 20 times, running more ads would become less and less effective even with no effect. So you are wasting money when you run too many ads. So depending on the products, the ads, the context, this curve can bend up, this curve can bend down, but it generally is an S-shaped curve. And the way this S-shaped curve bends is going to influence the effectiveness of different advertising intensity and also different types of timing of your ads, whether you run blitz, pulsing, or even advertising. So that's all on advertising. Make sure you watch the other Excel videos discussing the analytics that we talked about on these slides. Thank you and keep up the good work.